Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Today we're making nanner pudding. Now, banana pudding is a really traditional, really old classic dessert, and we had it at every holiday just about, especially for Memorial Day. My Aunt Dot would make a great big bowl, and she always made the custard pudding with meringue on top of it, which was absolutely delicious. But there are dozens of different recipes and dozens of different ways that you can make banana pudding. And Bret's favorite way is the way we're going to be making it today, with a vanilla pudding that is thickened with cornstarch, which is very similar to the cook and serve pudding that you would buy in the store, you know, the box stuff. But if you make it yourself, there's only a couple of extra ingredients you have to add, and the flavor is so much better. It's really no more work, but you're using real vanilla and real butter, and it just tastes better than the box stuff. So let's go over what we need to make this. Of course, vanilla wafers. Any brand you choose is fine. Some ripe bananas. You don't want them mushy, but you do want them ripe. If they're too green, they don't have enough flavor. And then for your pudding, you're going to need some vanilla, half a cup of sugar, 2 cups of milk, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, a half teaspoon of salt, and a tablespoon of butter. Now, use real vanilla extract, and any milk will work, but the more fat in your milk, the richer and the creamier your pudding is going to be. If you can use anything from skim milk to heavy cream. The more fat, the more calories too. So, you know, kind of adjust that based on what you want and your diet. What I'm using is about half and half and half 1% milk. Had a little half and half that I needed to use, so I'm putting it in there, and it'll make it a little richer and creamier because it has more fat. But like I said, you need 2 cups of milk, and it can be any milk. And we're going to start by combining some ingredients to get them out of the way. We're going to put our milk in the pan, and we're going to heat that just below boiling. We want to get it to the scalded point where we kind of got a few little bubbles around the edge, but we don't want it to boil. We're going to go ahead and combine our sugar and our cornstarch and our salt. Now, if you've watched the videos before, like making gravy and stuff, I've said never add cornstarch to hot liquid. You can't add plain cornstarch to hot liquid, but by combining the sugar and the cornstarch and whisking it together, that will keep the cornstarch from lumping up. If you don't mix it together and you just throw the sugar and the cornstarch in your milk after you get it hot, it will totally ruin your pudding. So make sure you get that combined fairly well. You don't want any lumps of cornstarch. Lumps of sugar don't really matter, but you don't want lumps of cornstarch. You want to have that evenly distributed in there so that when you add it to your milk, it doesn't lump. Turn your milk on about medium heat, and you can let it heat while you're layering your cookies and bananas. And now, how much of everything you put in this just depends on what your favorite way to eat banana pudding is. Now, I know I've had it in restaurants, and it's literally kind of like a banana flavored soup. It doesn't have hardly any bananas or any cookies in it, and I don't like it like that. The way I had it growing up and the way I made it for my kids growing up was it was layered bananas and cookies, and then the pudding was poured on top of it. So that's the way I'm doing it today. Now, if you want more pudding and less bananas and cookies, you put less bananas and cookies. I like to get about 4 layers in here of bananas and cookies, And I sliced my bananas, well, that one was a little thin, about like this. You know, maybe a little thicker than 1/4 of an inch. You don't want them too thick, but you don't want them so thin that they just kind of blend in with the pudding either. You can make this in any kind of dish. You know, I'm using a little glass loaf pan. When my kids were growing up, I always used a big round casserole dish. My Aunt Dot, she had this big Pyrex bowl that she would make it in, you know, the brown ones with the flowers on it. That thing must have held 1.5 gallons, and she would make it completely full. Probably have, gosh, I don't know, 8 layers in it anyway. This dish here will hold about 4 layers, and how many layers is going to depend on your dish. And this will serve, 4 to 6 people. If you're making it just for yourself, you might want to cut the pudding in half, or you could go ahead and make a whole batch of pudding and just use half of it for something else. Just eat it for vanilla pudding, because this is a really good vanilla pudding. You do want to make sure you cut any bruises off your bananas, because you are using ripe bananas. And I usually get the bananas that have been marked down, you know, the ones in the bag or the ones on the discount rack in the produce when I'm making this. Otherwise, you have to wait several days before you can even make a banana pudding out of the bananas, because they're usually green when they sell them in the produce department. Keep an eye on your milk while you're layering this. You don't want it to scorch. It should be all right to heat on medium heat, but I like to occasionally give mine a little bit of a stir. You don't have to be as meticulous about this as I am. Lots of folks will just cut up their bananas and take their bananas and their cookies and stir them in the pudding when it gets done and not do the layers at all. So you could do that and not take the time to layer it if you were in a hurry, or if if that's the way you had it. You don't have to do all this layering. You can literally just cut up your bananas and have your cookies ready, and when your pudding gets done, you can throw them in the pot and stir them up, and that works just fine too. You don't need anything else to go with this, but you can garnish it with whipped cream or stick a cookie on top of it. I actually did this one last night. My cookie keeps falling over there. If you're gonna make it for some kind of an event, you know, some kind of get together or something, and you're gonna garnish it with whipped cream and cookies, wait until right before you serve it to put your garnish on it, because your whipped cream will tend to fall and your cookies will get soft and they will fall, which is what's going on here. My whipped cream's holding up just fine, but my cookie got soft on me. And this is my last layer I'm doing here. This will be the 4th layer of banana, and then I'll put another layer of cookie on top of that. And I think my milk is just about hot here, so I'm going to have to hurry it up. I'm going to go ahead and add in my cornstarch and my sugar mixture here. Now this is just going to take a minute to cook. You want to stir it constantly and stir it fast, and as soon as it gets thick, you're going to cut the heat off, and then you're going to stir in your vanilla and your butter. And you got to work really quick at this point, because your pudding will get so thick that it won't run down in your bananas and your cookies. Okay, it's thick. It actually did boil on this. If you're using an electric stove, or if you have a little more control on your gas, it probably will take just a tiny bit longer, and you don't want to let this boil. I mean, mine came to a boil, but I didn't let it sit there and boil. And you can see how thick it already is. My whisk is leaving a nice trail in it. It's at least as thick as gravy. So go ahead and add your butter and whisk that. And you want to add at least a teaspoon of vanilla. I usually add a little bit more, which I just did accidentally, but I like at least 1.5 teaspoons. You can put in up to 2 teaspoons if you want, or even more. It's, like I said, you're making it, you make it the way you like it. One more layer of cookies real quick so we can get our pudding over here before it sets up. I used probably 3/4 of a box of vanilla wafers. And, you know, like I said, that's kind of up to you how many you use. If you like less cookies, use less cookies. If you like more, use more. Okay, now all we're going to do is just pour this over top of our layers of pudding and bananas. Get it kind of close to the edges because we want it to run down in there. Might want to switch to a spatula so you can kind of help it down in the edges a little bit, because mine is already starting to set up. You can see it's coated the pan there real good. It really does not take long for it to set up. If you've made the custard pudding with the egg yolks and stuff in it, and you've had trouble getting it to set up, you might want to try the cornstarch pudding, because if you get it hot, it will set up. Okay, after I've gone around the edges there and kind of helped it down in the edges, I give it a little shake, which helps it down in the edges a little bit more. Kind of lay that cookie there back down. And the thing about pouring this hot pudding over top of your layers is it's going to soak down in the cookies, and the cookies are actually going to soak it up more because it's hot. So you don't need to take the time to do a layer of bananas and a layer of wafers and a layer of pudding. And if you do that before you get done making it, what's going to happen is right here, you can see how thick this is. It's not even going to go, I mean, you're going to be spreading it on like frosting. That is completely set up already, and it's still on the hot pot. So it sets up really, really quick. That's why I pour it over. And it does take it a minute to run down, but it'll continue to run down in there because it's warm and the cookies are like soaking it up. And you'll have pudding all the way in the bottom. I've been making it this way for 35 years or so, and that's the way my Aunt Dot did it, and there was always pudding in the bottom. A little tap though does help, and a little shake kind of gets it down in there a little bit. And it's mostly down in there already, but it will continue to settle on down in there and get all the way in the bottom. Now this one here, it had 4 layers in it, just like this did. And you can see it's all the way down in there. And if I could tip it up and show you the bottom, I would show you the bottom. But it won't tip without dumping. And like I said, you can garnish it with a little whipped cream, a cookie, do it in a fancy little cup of some sort. Or you can just bake it in a casserole dish, or not bake it, make it in a casserole dish. You don't have to bake it. Not this kind. If you do the custard and the meringue, of course, that has to be baked. But this is Bret's favorite kind, and he likes it without any whipped cream, without any kind of topping on it, without any kind of garnish. He just likes the pudding, the bananas, and the vanilla wafers. So, you know, kind of, if you remember how it was made when you were a kid, that's the way you're going to like it best. So that's the recipe you need to find. And I am going to do eventually the custard one with the meringue topping on it. I'll probably wait a little while because this is actually our second banana pudding recipe. Samantha did a no-cook version that we've had up for a long time. It was one of our very first videos. And this is cook, but it's not the bake. And we're going to do the other one too. Because like I said, this is one of those desserts that is really traditional, and it was at every holiday. And everybody has their favorite version, so I want you all to have your favorite version before we're done. This is a must-have recipe, and you must have the one that you love. Before we go, I want to kind of give y'all some encouragement. I know there's probably even more crazy stuff happening right now than was happening last year at this time. And after the past year, I know we are all really kind of getting to the edge, and we've really all kind of had enough. But I want to remind you about that part of the Bible in Exodus where Moses went up on the mountain to talk to God, and the Israelites were left down in the valley in the desert. They couldn't see Moses, they couldn't see God, and they kind of couldn't see any hope. And they turned away, they lost their faith. They took all of the gold that God had given them when He delivered them from Egypt, and they turned it into a golden calf to worship and pray to. Folks, this is not the time to lose your faith. This is not the time to give up. I know we might be in the desert right now, and I know we might not be able to see God or see what He's doing, but He is doing something, and He is still in control, and He will get us through the desert. He will deliver us from this in His time. So please don't lose your faith. Please don't give up hope. Continue to pray for each other. Continue to pray for our nation, and continue to pray for the world as a whole, because there are things going on all around the world right now that are really, really disturbing. And I wish I could go into more detail and talk about it more, but unfortunately those limits are one of the things that are going on, or that's going on right now, and we just have to live with it and pray about it and trust God to take care of it. God is still there. He always has been there, and He always will be there, and He will take care of you. So don't lose your faith and continue to pray. If you have not already, please don't forget to click like and subscribe before you leave. And until next time, remember to put God first.